We welcome everyone. We are here chatting about Giten's project in the Ukraine, and I'm really, really happy to welcome you to this conversation and to welcome anybody who might get the opportunity to be with us.
Thank you, Steph. It's really a pleasure to share this time with you and everyone else who's watching.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of like, even beyond pleasure, this is so important. So I'd just like to frame a little bit about how we came to be having this conversation right now. I recently saw, as many people did, that you have been doing some super important work over in Poland with refugees from the Ukraine in the current situation over there. And not many people have had frontline experience directly with what's happening and have got to see the trauma and the displacement that's been happening. And you have. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your background, your story, your investment in both Poland and the Ukraine, because I know that that's part of your roots and your heritage. And the same with Nisaga, your partner. And just tell us a little bit more about what you bore witness to when you were there.
Yes, thank you, Steph. I am originally from Ukraine. I was born and grew up in Odessa in Soviet Union. Well, Ukraine was still part of the Soviet Union, and I left at 18 years old and moved to the United States at the time. And ever since I was 20 years old, I was going into the direction of working with the body. I was a massage therapist in New York City, and then later in life I started to work with breath, and then this led me into working with trauma and developing biodynamic breath work and trauma release, which is a trauma-informed breath work modality. So in Poland for the past 12 years, Nisarga and I created what's called Integral Body Institute, and we're leading our trainings here in Poland. And when this war in Ukraine started, we already had a training planned in Poland, and I went there. And during the training, we decided to create a hub in Warsaw to support the Ukrainian refugees. There's over 1.5 million of Ukrainian refugees right now in Warsaw. There's about 4.7 million Ukrainians now left Ukraine for Poland and Slovakia and Moldova and Romania. Many European countries are receiving now Ukrainian refugees, but Poland received more than any other. So this conflict impacted me very deeply, and going through all these emotions of anger and frustration and what can I do to support the people. So I found that this to create the hub in Warsaw to support the Ukrainian refugees with trauma that they experienced and are carrying right now. So first of all, it's trauma of displacement. Many of them lost everything they had. It's incredible situation that pretty much 90% of the refugees are women and children and elderly.
Wow,
all the men between the ages of 18 and 60 had to stay behind to fight. So it's quite a powerful experience to work with the people, and majority are with acute trauma, which is very different to what we so far taught in our trainings. We taught developmental trauma. We worked with shock trauma, that the effects of trauma that's been in the body for a while.
Yeah.
But now we're dealing with people that are traumatized, and the conflict is about 6 weeks old now, and people are coming in to Europe in shock. What we noticed there, they're contracted, they're dissociated from their physical body. The moment they begin to talk about even where they're from, they go into big activation. So based on that, we developed a structure to support the people in this space, and it's been working beautifully.
So what I'm hearing, if I understand rightly, is that the development of this hub was a response to what you were seeing. So it wasn't an advanced planning as in we're going out to Poland and we know this is happening, so we'll set it up. It was coming in and coming into your field of awareness and your experience. And then the response to that was that you created what? Training? Did you have a space at that point to do that? How did you manage?
You know, the idea was already to do something when I was on my way to Poland for the training that was scheduled before the whole conflict started. And the hub was kind of a development while we were in the training. The group of people came together, Nisarga, myself, Eki, Mike Baskin, Sirena, Andrea, there's a few others that came together to support the development of this. So this actually came as we got together and discussed what can we do. And Nisarga and I, we funded it with our own funds for the first month. And now the hub is operating. We're offering regular workshops for people, for the Ukrainian community, which is, it's incredible how people benefit from it. So,
enormously. I'm just wondering, I'm curious, what kind of outreach model do you have? Is it difficult to let people know about what's happening? And have you now been able to find somewhere consistent to offer that? Because I know you're back now in the US. But planning to return.
Yes, we found a space in Warsaw, the space that we are renting, and we hired a Ukrainian person that has contact to the Ukrainian community to support, to promote to people that this is going on. This is free of charge for them to come into groups on weekly basis and work with their trauma. So we are actively looking for many ways to bring this work to the Ukrainian community in Warsaw for now, but we are going to be expanding. So there is a regular space that we're using in Warsaw. There may be another space that will be available to us within the next days. Nisarga is still there. I've been back to California just for the last 2 days, and we're continuing to support this project. With the idea is to keep this going for as long as possible, and to train the Ukrainians also to use this approach, to use this structure that we created to take back home with them, because people will be at some point going back and they're taking this trauma back with them.
I love that you're empowering the people who need it now, who can then take it back into their communities if and when they're able to return, or if and when they find a way to reconnect with the families, loved ones, people, places that they've had displacement from. That's really, really powerful. And so I guess that it differs to breathwork. First thing, by the way, hats off, to even offer a training is very, very intense. And then to offer a training and to come in with this kind of response to an immediate situation, you guys must have had to really, really increase your energy output to do that. And, it's humbling, isn't it, when we're in positions where actually we go, I haven't got anything to complain about. I'm going to put myself aside for a moment and self-care. But I just want to really recognize you in doing that whilst you were there.
Yeah, thank you, Steph. It was quite challenging, exhausting at times, and but it's definitely was worth it just to see how people would change over the course of the 2.5 hours of going through this workshop, how their faces changed, how they were able to speak about where they're coming from, what they're feeling without feeling overwhelmed, to create the connection. And it's a really touching experience. It's definitely worth it in so many ways. Yeah, and just now I'm arriving back to California, and it feels like it's a different world here, When you're in Europe and you are constantly confronted with people on the street. Warsaw's population grew by 20% with the
Wow.
influx of Ukrainians, refugees. So now, being in Warsaw and seeing Ukrainians on the streets, mostly women and children, like I said, and elderly, and reaching out to them and contacting the NGOs that work with the refugees to bring this service. We're constantly are in communication with the various NGOs to bring this work to them. It's incredible. It's incredible. So just being in a different continent now, being in California, it feels like, wow, energetically, I feel removed from, not energetically, but physically, geographically,
Yeah.
I feel removed from this. And it makes a difference. So people that are in Europe are exposed to this so much more
Yeah.
than here in the United States. And but it's quite an experience to be in Europe with this project.
Yeah, and you also mentioned, Jiten, that you were working directly with frontline service providers, because you just talked about reaching into the
Yeah.
NGOs. And I want to bring that in because I'm in the middle at the moment of reading a book that was written by a really good friend of mine who I've just run a retreat with, who used to be a firefighter, actually, in the London Fire Service. And he attended some really serious incidents. And the part that I was just reading, I mentioned it to him this morning, the part that I was just reading was where he'd gone in to attend these incidents and seen terrible things. He'd borne witness to people's trauma, and he and his co-workers were also traumatized. But they didn't have an outlet to be able to talk about it. It was just on with business, on next shift, next experience, next fire. So I think it's really important that you're also bringing this to the people who are in direct contact, because they can be traumatized by the things that they get to witness and see. Can you say a little bit more about that as well?
Yes, absolutely. This is a real thing. That vicarious traumatization is a real thing. People that are housing the refugees also are exposed to their stories and to their trauma, and in energetic proximity, in the physical proximity to the refugees, we pick up all of this energy into our bodies. So we do extend this workshop, this structure, to the aid workers and people that house refugees. And the way that Polish people showed up, that I've noticed, it's incredible. People gone on the first days of conflict, we had Polish people in the workshop that got into their cars, drove to the border, put people into their cars and drove them back home. This, for me, to just remember that this is happening, it's extremely moving. And we had people like this in our workshops, and people that work with refugees in terms of providing clothing and food, and the items, the first the basic items of that are needed. This is amazing how people in Poland and in other countries in Europe showed up for this effort.
Yeah, it is really. I saw you were just visibly moved with the memory of it. And, in our preliminary conversation, I saw the same thing in you, kind of that you'd just seen what people were doing and how people were responding. And it's a huge testament to the fact that community and connection can create great healing. incredible healing that they can offer somebody, some sense of something to hold on to and something to reach out towards when everything is confusing, because trauma that's created by shock, we can lose our connection to that sense of just well-being and making sense of the world, because the people who are the victims of these things that are happening to them often feel that they've lost their agency. So I'm really, it's incredible to see what people will do. And it shows me how much is needed, because when I hear you talk like that about clothing and food and shelter and a 20% increase in population, these displacements are enormous.
Yes.
And where are people supposed to go? I'd said to you, hadn't I, recently, people were coming into the UK, and the UK was putting in all these legislations, not in direct relation to that, but you have to have your paperwork, otherwise we're placing you in a holding kind of effectively prison. And it's like, who thinks about grabbing the right paperwork when you're being bombed or your homes are being forcibly taken? Nobody.
Yes. And, we had participants in the workshop, actually our translator in the workshops in Poland. She left with nothing more but the clothes on her back and her passport. And the reason of this is that she was in shock. Wow. And people came to her, put her in the car. Here's your passport, stuck it in her pocket, and hey, there you go. And there are many of people like that. We had participants that were driving in the car and there were bombs going off behind them. And so this kind of situation, it's countless instances of this is happening. So people coming in to this new country and not knowing what to do. Like, of course, there's a transition period that people need to settle first before you bring them into a trauma release workshop. And now the majority of people are settled in a certain place. There's a transition centers. The people first coming in for a few days, they're there until they're Polish citizens that just taking them into their homes. This is what I've seen, and it's this is happening on a massive scale. This is the biggest population movement that we've seen probably since World War II, for sure, since World War II. And it's a huge humanitarian crisis. And the work with trauma right now is extremely important. Yeah. People can't just stuff it down and continue with their lives as it's just another fact of war. For what we know now from science, how these kind of events impact generations after generations, generations to come can be suffering from this. Yeah. And not only on the victim side, the perpetrators too. Yeah, of course. People that are responsible for these atrocities, they will suffer as well. Yeah. So it's not just the Ukrainians. The Russians are in the same boat with that. And that for me is we want to support and work with people that have trauma. We don't discriminate. Yeah. And, I think we've already seen that in the last 2 years, there was a huge amount of global trauma from the pandemic and the situation that everybody was in. There was already a huge amount of that. We saw increases in violence and alcoholism. We saw increases in mental health and suicide. And then when you put this on top of that, there's going to be a huge amount, as you said, we can't keep stuffing it down anymore. We just can't. And I think the more awareness there is, and there are many people doing great work with trauma all over the world. But let's come back to your project, because I want to talk about this fundraiser that you've set up, because you already said you and Nizaga and others that you were connected with were putting in your own money to fund this. And obviously that's not sustainable. And what we want is sustainable places and practices and opportunities for people.
So you've now set up a crowdfunder, and we're going to share the link below this conversation afterwards so that people can still donate. There are 8 days left, I believe. Please tell us a little bit about how that's going and what you hope for from it.
Yes, today is day 5 of our crowdfunding campaign, and so far we raised over $13,000. We're going for $60,000. We have 2 platforms set up. One is for Polish donation and GoFundMe campaign for the international donors anywhere in Europe, in the United States, any country in the world. You can donate to support this project. We want to continue this project to keep going because it's incredible and it's necessary and it's very effective. So the money goes into paying for the space, paying the facilitators that constantly showing up, paying the Ukrainian IT team, for Ukrainian supporters that are bringing this knowledge about this work to Ukrainians, to get them into the group room, to support them, to realize that they need this work. Of course, majority of people, they're regular folks, they don't even realize that the trauma is real and the trauma is held in the body. They need to be educated. Until they do it, they don't even know that how effective it is. So to actually educating people that this works, that they need to do it to actually support themselves and support others. To be able to transcend this, or to actually to just be within their window of tolerance so they're not overwhelmed. So this project is right now is going to be funded by your donations, and your donations are going to a good cause. They're going also to train the Ukrainians to bring this work back with them. So all of this requires funds, and we're highly appreciative of anyone who's already donated. It's a huge gratitude to all of you, and we still need more.
Yeah, I want to say something about that as well, Giten, because crowdfunders, sometimes they get a bad rap because people be like, oh, we're asking for money, we're asking for money. In some ways, gone are the days where there was government funding for so many things like this. So we are reliant within our communities. And that's a key word for me, because I was recently part of a crowdfunding campaign for the Honeyquin people that some friends organised, who were organising an event in London, who lost a lot of their belongings and homes and blah, blah, blah to violent floods. And what I noticed was that those communities in and of themselves were more resilient because they have such strong communities and community ways of living. And many people in other parts of Europe and the world don't have that. So that's number one thing that's there. But number two is that when we come together in communities, there is so much that we can do. And for me, it's kind of like moving money around. And I know not everybody has money. And by the way, no donation is too small. No donation is too small. $1 will buy somebody a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or go some way. But if you're in a position where you can give more, when we can start to come together in our communities and understand what community means, helping one another up, supporting one another to provide what's needed, to just be there for people. You and I both know through our work that, I mean, for me, that's the most common thing that I hear. Even in the breathwork sessions, people don't always come to breathe. They do, but they really, really get a lot from community.
Yes.
Seeing those connections starting to build.
Absolutely, Steph. That is exactly why we are doing this. It's community builder. Do you see the Ukrainians that are coming into the workshop that they don't know each other after spending these 2.5 hours going through a very simple structure, but effective structure, exposing their feelings, being heard and hearing others? This creates the community where definitely this is our focus, but also throughout the years of practicing breath work, and I know you are, and there's other breath work modalities and biodynamic breath work as well. We created a huge global community of like-minded individuals that are looking at themselves. That this is our task, this is our journey in life, is to constantly self-reflect so we can grow. And we are using breath work as a tool. But it's important to come together with the common goal. And the common goal right now is to prevent trauma from perpetuating itself. It's to prevent trauma from being passed on from generation to generation. And like you mentioned before, that rightfully is that we've gone from COVID, 2.5 years of COVID related isolation, now into a full scale war in Europe. That could be incredibly taxing on the whole humanity. And we're already seeing the impacts of it.
Yeah. And it's really important that we don't take the approach of, well, it's not happening to me, it's not in my visible arena, because like you say, everybody, I mean, this is our job, I think, as human beings, is to evolve, to really get the opportunity to look inside and not create more trauma. And trauma can be really small ways that we can generate trauma for ourselves and other people, or it can be enormous, like the trauma that you've just been witnessing. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about this work, and the opportunity that it's given me for embodied work, being present in the body, not having to go and take plant medicines, not having to go and do something that's all in the head, but is really, really gets into the language of the body. That's what your book's about, Feel to Heal, isn't it? And the foundation of your work. So the two aspects to this fundraiser is, one, to provide the services and the premises and everything else that needs paying for. And two, it's to start training people, again, to make it more sustainable, so that when you're not there and when other people aren't there, that ripples out into the world. Because once you've got that training, you can apply that to anything, right?
Absolutely. And actually tomorrow, there's a first training for the local Polish facilitators. Nisarga is running in-person part in Warsaw, and I will be running an online version together with Sirena Andrea, who now we're including storytelling for trauma release. This is part of the training. This is a very new thing that provides people opportunity to be heard and to tell their stories without feeling overwhelmed. So this is part of this project as well. So now we already started. There will be 12, there's a 12 participants, 12 trainers that will be going into this training just in Warsaw alone. And the next step is that we will be doing an online training for anyone who has already a background in trauma work, in trauma-informed modalities. That we want to train people to apply this structure anywhere in Europe or anywhere in the world, pretty much. Besides the war refugees, we're constantly will be dealing now with displaced people because of climate change, conflicts, climate change. It's going to be ongoing. It's not going to stop. There may be waves of it diminishing and flaring up again, but it's going to be a constant thing.
And the stronger and the more resourced we are as practitioners, the stronger and the more resourced our communities will be, because we can feed that in and ripple it through. So really, really important project and inspiring work, and, you know, infinite gratitude for doing it. And sometimes it actually feels like we have no choice, huh? You know, how can you stand and see something like that and not react, respond?
Absolutely. It doesn't feel like at this point we have any choice. We need to show up in the best way we possibly can. And also salute to you for sharing your work and training the practitioners. This is so much needed. And no matter what breathwork modality, it's a body-oriented modality to support people to let go of their own trauma and to support others to do the same.
Thank you so much for your time today to talk a little bit more about this project. And to everybody who's listening, thank you for listening, and even more, thank you for your donations. As I say, we're going to make sure that you have that link available and that you can use it and share it widely. If you have newsletters, share it within your communities, on your Facebook pages, in your groups, across social media. And let's motivate. Let's come together and create action.
Yes.
Anything else
absolutely.
you want to add, Giten, as a final?
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. All I want to add is please share it with your communities. Let's make this possible. If this is the best way that you can do right now is to support this project to continue going. I highly, highly appreciate this, and I'm speaking on behalf of our organization and the organization that we have in Poland, Biodynamic Breathwork and Trauma Release Institute and Integral Body Institute, and all of our staff and facilitators and teachers and students. We're eternally grateful to you for supporting this project. Meditate and donate. That's our slogan right now on our campaign. And each morning at 11 a.m. I'm running a live meditation on Facebook Live and posting it to Instagram. 11 a.m. Pacific time, California time, and it's a 10-minute live meditation that kind of supports you to come back to your body and check in.
And that, I believe, is 7 p.m. UK time. I think you're 8 hours behind me, and yes. 8 p.m. Europe time, Central Europe time. So where is that, on the Biodynamic Breathwork page? Or
it's on Biodynamic Breathwork and Trauma Release Facebook page.
Okay, great. So we can share that as well and just connect in any ways that you can. Thank you for listening, everyone, and keep an eye on how this project goes. May it come to full fruition and abundance.